Wow, that was fun.
All right, there we go. No, disregard my message. I'm good now.
All right. Wow, that was weird. Well, good thing we didn't have anybody tuning in right away. Sorry about that. Not sure what happened right there, but as soon as I put up the 30 seconds until showtime, my camera and everything kind of went poof. So fun times. Anyway,
Yes, sir.
guess what? We're back. We get the show started here, and what a fun week, especially for I can say for probably both of us here. The first time that the Ravens are playing the Steelers this week for the season, and it could not get any better. It's always fun, no matter which team is either on top if one
Hmm.
really well or the other one isn't. It's always a fun game. Being a Ravens fan and stuff, you kind of saw that when we went and played Cleveland. We got beat by Cleveland. Cleveland's a terrible team, but
Hmm.
that's just kind of how the AFC North goes, isn't it?
In
Um,
division games, records out the window. We got the Browns. We got you, then the Browns. So it's a short week too.
yeah, and the Steelers haven't played anybody in the division yet,
No, which is crazy. Yeah.
so that's insane because we've already swept the Bengals,
Hmm.
so we're done with them. We've played Cleveland once, and so yeah, we've got 3 games in the division already. But this is going to be a fun game. Cannot say enough. So happy that we have been able to connect and do all of these shows and
Hmm.
all that kind of stuff. And even people in Fantasy Turf Wars, when we're first trying to put this all together, was kind of joking, "Oh, we got to get you guys together." A Ravens fan and a Steelers
Hmm.
fan. So I'm glad that it works out. I'll
Yep.
call you my friend up until Saturday afternoon, and that'll be that.
No doubt. Yeah, it should be. There's a mutual respect with those two teams. I mean, how many times has it gone down to literally the last play? Usually a field goal. Last year, one was a 2-point conversion that if it wasn't for JJ Watt, the guy was wide open. So, like, I mean, it's you got to expect it's last. It's never like more than a 3 points spread usually,
Yeah, and
unless
I think
somebody's injured.
yeah, exactly. And I think this year is a little bit different because the two teams have always been known for great defense. Now, you guys still
Hmm.
have a great defense this year, and we don't.
Yeah,
But we're putting
good
up the
run
most points
defense
per
though.
game. So true, very true.
Very good run
And
defense.
is it because
Part of
we
it's
put
a
up a lot of
pass. It's a
points, and so
pass
the teams are
funnel. Yeah,
yeah, yep,
but still, they're still pretty stout versus the run.
yeah. Well, I tell you what, should we get going with week 11? We've been
Yeah,
off
let's
here
go.
a couple of weeks. It's just been all by my
Hmm.
lonesome here, but I've had some pretty decent success over the last couple of weeks, letting people know what to do. Let me go ahead and get my banner going here. If you care to follow there on the bottom there, you can catch both of us, obviously on YouTube, on X, on Facebook, Instagram. Um, Shawn, anything new with you as far as total Apex or with Yard Barker, anything going on there?
Yeah, just the same. Just working both the betting side and the fantasy side. Still on the betting side, I'm doing usually at least one, sometimes two college basketball plays. I'm 2-0 on the year on my two plays, and I like the mid majors. So I gave people Idaho State the first week over covering over Arizona State, and then this past week I had Illinois Chicago covering against Northwestern. So I'm trying to give one early in the week. I'll usually do that before the fantasy picks up. As you know, it'll pick up about Wednesday, and then still doing the full slate DFS and an individual this week. I just sent out 49ers Seahawks DFS preview, and then prior to that, one of the two marquee games besides ours, the Bills Chiefs. So I did the write up on that one for DFS. Those are obviously two of the best games. I mean, those are got to be the two for me. Those are the two marquee games. So
Oh yeah, absolutely. I look forward to reading those after we're done here.
yeah. So I tell you that the Bills Chiefs is tough because it's tough to recommend a sit. And then the 49ers with McCaffrey back, it's tough to recommend a sit. That offense when they're all there, it's very hard to find a sit. So those were actually tough articles to
Oh,
write.
I'll bet. I'll bet. I'm not sure if I've got too many of those in our overall here as well, just playing for this week. But tell you what, let's get into it. And Shawn, I'll let you start. Let's go ahead and see what your take is on the quarterbacks. Week 11, which is probably going to be critical for people. If you're watching this, you're probably in the
Yep.
playoff hunt.
Hmm.
So critical information here. You know what? And I've got it on the bottom here too. If you like our advice, if you appreciate our advice, or our tips, we appreciate your tips. Let us know what we can do to help. So far, helped out a few people in last night's game, even though I got stuck with McLaurin and
Hmm.
going up against Austin Eckler. I had a 60-40 in my favor. Now I'm a 40-60. and it's in
It's
his
amazing
favor.
how one player flips it like that.
Isn't that ridiculous? You got 1.5 points, and Eckler ended up getting like 13.5 or something. So
Yeah, and how do you figure you're trailing? You figure Washington, that's the time too. You benefit the wide receivers. It's weird. But Eckler, he's the passing back. So
yep.
So for me this week, so I went more in the mid tier with the DFS. So obviously I like Wilson because of the matchup against the and you and I talked about the Ravens are a pass funnel defense. So because they're so good against the run. I like Wilson in the mid tier. I like Justin Herbert. I talked about him. I was on 4th and Goal this week because I wasn't able to get on last week at Total Apex Sports. And I like Herbert. They're starting to pick up the passing volume. He's using his legs a little bit. He's got a great matchup again this week. So I like him in the mid tier range. And then my recommended use or start for this week on my full slate article was actually Bo Nix, another good mid tier quarterback. He's quarterback 9 overall, and people may not know that, but that puts him in the QB1 discussion.
Absolutely.
He's at 17.4 fantasy points per game in FanDuel scoring, which is you like 20 from your quarterback in DFS, but he can do it. He hasn't been running as much lately, but he's got that potential. So he could go if he goes 17, but if he runs, you're looking in the mid 20s. Falcons defense 26 in points allowed to the quarterback position and just 24th against the pass. So again, I like him because you get the passing. Obviously, he's getting better and better in that Sean Payton fantasy-friendly system. But he has 4 rushing touchdowns on the year. So that's kind of where I'm at for quarterbacks. On the flip side, I don't like Caleb Williams. I have him as a sit. He's tailed off big time, as you and I both know in the last 3 games. He had a stellar run weeks 3 through 6 where he scored over 20 points in 3 to 4 games. But now he's dropped to 8.4 points a game. And he's recent. Now he's down to QB 20. So, you heard some rumblings. We talked about him being replaced. Is he going to be started? And the Green Bay defense is very respectable. I don't like him at all in that spot. I just, a couple other ones. And to go without, the upper ends go without. We talking about Allen and Mahomes are going to be good, this week. I have Allen as my stud of the week. He's pretty much my lock, my stud. He's starting to pick it up. 20 points is the goal for DFS for quarterbacks in his last 5. Allen's at 22.58 per game. He's QB5 overall. Chiefs are a very good defense, 4th in total defense, but they do allow their 19th in points allowed to position. But he's got that rushing that he can save you. And obviously, and my dart of the week is actually a quarterback, and that's Anthony Richardson. He's back in the helm. It really goes without saying he's got his metrics are horrific. So that's a downgrade. It's downgrade to all Colt skill position players.
Yeah,
and that's
absolutely.
kind of me for the quarterback synopsis for the week.
Yeah, and I tell you what, you hit on a lot of mine as well. And obviously we've got a couple of teams that are off this week. And so it kind of narrows down the potential for quarterbacks and who you should start and who you should bench. Like you, my stud of the week is Josh Allen. You said 3rd overall. I've got him listed as 4th overall. I think it just kind of depends on the format of fantasy football that you're playing. But versus Kansas City, the Bills score the 3rd most amount of points per game. Kansas City has kind of been living on the edge, as everybody knows. They're undefeated, but every game has been a 1-score game. They barely won last week against Denver. So heavy is the head that wears the crown, right? I think the Bills win this game. If you're betting on it, I think that they win this game. I think Josh Allen really comes out, and I think they win by a lot, to be honest with you.
And I have them in my weekly parlay. I write that's one of my 3 is the Bills. I like them a lot. It's a lot at the public is all over Kansas City, which I love.
Yeah, and I don't know. I've got on here again, and this is always fun to check on while we're doing the show. I've got to check on a couple of guys. Amari Cooper, who seems to be questionable still, but Dalton Kincaid has been ruled out.
Yep.
But hey, if Amari Cooper plays, that's still pretty decent. Keon Coleman looks like he's still going to be out for another week, but I still like the Bills. I just like the offense. I like the firepower there. So he's my stud of the week as well. And then behind him, I've got Brock Purdy, who's listed as number 8th right now against Seattle. They give up the 8th most total yards per game, the 10th most points allowed per game. So I do like Brock, especially with the addition of CMC. I think it takes a little bit more of the pressure off of Brock Purdy, him just being back, and he doesn't feel like he's got to do everything himself there. And it's also, I believe that game has the highest over-under of the weekend, if I'm not mistaken.
It's one of the best. Yep, one of the best.
So you could pretty much go based off of him. And then, like you as well, I've got Bo Nix. You said number 9. I've got number 9 going up against Atlanta, who's got 9th in passing yards allowed per game and in total yards allowed per game. So they're giving up a lot of points. And I bring that up because of, the point that you just made. He can run as well.
Mm-hmm.
Love Bo Nix, front runner for Offensive Rookie of the Year at this point in time, especially after last night's game. I gave some advice last night. Somebody was asking me about do I start, and you mentioned him already, Justin Herbert, or do I go with Jaden Daniels? And I said, well, Justin Herbert's going to be the guy who's going to get you a solid 20, 24 points in that area. Jaden Daniels is going to be a little bit of a mystery this week with the rib injury and all that kind of stuff, going up against a good defense with good cornerbacks with the Eagles. He could get you 10 points. He could get you 30 points.
Yes.
And so if it, really looking at your matchup, if you're behind, if you think you need a huge day, that ceiling for Daniels is always going to be much higher just because he can use his legs. Last night he looked terrible. But if it was an even matchup, to go ahead with Herbert, and I hope that they went with Herbert in that kind of a situation.
Yeah.
But my must-sits kind of similar. I don't like Sam Darnold this week against Tennessee, giving up the fewest passing yards and the fewest total yards per game. And Sam Darnold looked like crap last week. I mean, let's be honest about it. With all the interceptions, they barely got by Jacksonville. So I would say go ahead and sit Darnold. To your point as well, Caleb Williams, he's a sit. Versus Green Bay or really any other team for this matter. Chicago's got a terrible rest of the schedule coming up here. So Caleb Williams, go ahead and put him on your bench if you just don't want to drop him altogether. And then I also said Anthony Richards as well. Going up against the Jets, they give up the second least amount of passing yards per game, the 7th fewest total yards allowed per game. And let's face it, AR is just not good. He was benched for a reason. I don't think that he's going to do a whole lot there. For my sleepers, I've got kind of a comeback week for Jared Goff. Didn't look the best last week, but against Jacksonville, gives up the most total yards allowed per game. And this is something that, we should have seen from Sam Darnold as well.
Yes.
Jacksonville gives up the 3rd most passing yards allowed per game, the 6th most points allowed per game. Jared Goff, I think they're going to feast that whole team. I'm going to mention more Detroit Lions after this because I think that whole offense does really well against Jacksonville. My second sleeper is going to be Aaron Rodgers. He's ranked 15th right now, going up against Indianapolis for the sheer fact of what I just said about AR. I think it's going to be a game where that offense doesn't stay on the field enough, the Indianapolis offense, and it allows Rodgers to dictate how that game is going to go. So look for him as a sleeper play this week. And then my third sleeper is Tua. 29th overall, obviously had the missed time with the concussion. He's been out for half of the year, but I like him versus Las Vegas, who allows the 3rd most points allowed per game. And that offense can be dynamic if he stays healthy. If he's playing well, Tua is going to be a big hit this weekend against Las Vegas.
And to tell you how fickle, like last week, I recommended Darnold. He's my feature in DFS, and you can go from hero to GOAT just like that in your write-ups. He had 3 picks, and they're all 2 in the goal line, 2 in the end zone, and 1 at the goal line against a horrible pass defense. And like he could have really been a DFS boon. It's amazing how 3 throws like that, like you get all the way down there 3 times and throw 3 picks. That's hard to do.
Yeah, you almost have to try to do that. First question, let's get to that real quick, Shawn. Will you trade Pittman, Wan'Dale Robinson, who I never play, and one OF Madison or Estime, and Jake Fergie for Rico, Cade Otton, and BTJ? I only ever used Pittman and Jake Fergie. It's a 4 for 3. And I don't like Pittman at this point in time, especially if they're going to go with AR. Wan'Dale Robinson seems to be the only good person in there. Estime, look out for him though. He's actually
Estime is I like getting him, but he's given up Dowdle.
He would be for Rico Dowdle, who you can't trust anymore in Dallas because they have quarterback issues. Cade Otton is really the only good person there.
He's good. I hate to give up Otton. As long as you have somebody for Otton, because Otton is a QB or tight end 1 for the rest of the way. At least he's locked in. Dowdle is been declared the RB1 for Dallas, and only took him 11 weeks to declare an RB1 after their quarterback's out for the year. But Estime is someone who, again, we've said this multiple times on the show. If you can get the feature back in that offense, you're golden. But he's all over the place right now. For all we know, it's it's Williams this week. Probably not. I mean, he's been pumping up Estime. So I do like getting Estime.
Yeah, I like Estime as well.
I
And
just
Jason,
don't like losing Otten as long as you got somebody else though with you.
well,
But
Jason
another good
said
tight
I
end.
would be getting Rico, Otten, and BTJ.
Okay.
And I think in that
I
situation,
like getting Otten. Yeah.
yeah, I think that's who I would want. The only person that you're going to lose really out of giving up Pittman, Wan'Dale Robinson, who, yeah, he's a solid wide receiver too.
Mm-hmm.
Madison or Estime, I would give up Madison. If there's an option there, I would give up Madison over Estime, and then Jake Ferguson, who's not going to do anything either. No. So scratch Pittman, scratch Jake Fergie. They're not going to do anything. Wan'Dale Robinson is the only mid guy you might use maybe in a bye week situation. And Estime could potentially be a starter, so don't get rid of him.
No. Give Madison, keep Estime, then go ahead. As long as
you're getting Rico,
if you're getting Otten,
BTJ,
you're getting
I would go that trade.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Not a bad trade at all because you're getting a really good tight end. I mean, right now an upper tier tight end.
Yeah, upper tier tight end, and I don't think that Trevor Lawrence is out for the rest of the year, right? So Mac Jones is something that you might have to tolerate for a few weeks. But BTJ is still legit. It's unfortunate because I'll get to him later on in the show too. I've got a little snippet about BTJ, but Rico's still running back number one. Who knows? Maybe they get ahead. If you got to put him in a flex situation or something like that, he might actually do something for you as an RB1 against maybe a weaker opponent later down the line.
Yeah, he's getting tight end 5 and Otten. So
yeah,
that says a lot.
That. Tight end 5 and BTJ is up there when everything is working well. Yes. Rico's still pretty much down there, but I think you're getting three solid people for other individuals like Pittman and Ferguson and Madison, who I probably wouldn't otherwise play or even think about.
Yeah. Yeah. Madison, I mean, you could argue he's waiver wire fodder too.
Yeah. Yep. Question from Brad. I've lost 3 straight after starting 7-0. Have Amon-Ra, DJ Moore, Waddle, Olave, and BTJ at wide receiver. I traded Bowers and Waddle for his Andrews, D-Hop, and Wan'Dale Robinson. I hope this trade saves my season. Well, I hope it does too. It's too bad you couldn't package DJ Moore in there. I've completely given up on DJ Moore in one of my fantasy leagues. He's on my bench this week, and I'm starting. I said McLaurin, Deebo Samuels. We start 3 wide receivers in the fantasy turf wars, and I think I'm starting Ridley, and then I've got Cedric Tillman, all starting ahead of DJ Moore. I can't trust him.
Well, I mean, it's the quarterback. We just spoke about it. Like he was great, and then if your quarterback can't play, you can't support any fantasy pieces. That's the problem. Yeah, and we talk about it with Richardson too.
Yeah, good luck, Brad. I hope that works out for you.
Yeah.
But that was I think we just finished up on quarterback. So tell you what, let's dive into the running back situation here. What do you have for your running backs?
Okay, this might be the last week you could potentially use him, but my feature for running backs highlight was Kareem Hunt. His usage is off the charts. He's averaging 25.2 touches per game with 5 touchdowns since he's taken over the backfield. He's a top 28 running back in PPR, and he's only played 6 games. If you're going to get the Bills, they're 31st in fantasy points allowed to running back. So I wrote this right in here: ride the DFS wave with Kareem Hunt in Week 11, because this might be the last week. They just declared Pacheco out, so he's not going to be back this week. So if Pacheco comes back, he's going to eat into that volume. Another starts at running back I like this week, Devon Achane. How can you not, between the passing and the rushing? He's almost game script proof. Yeah. And since Mostert fumbled, I think he has 1 carry. He had that big fumble, I think, in the first Bills game. So Montgomery has a great matchup this week. I love him. He's a goal line back, and we should see a good Lions offense this week. For sits, I am Mostert. I just spoke to him Monday night. He had no carries and 2 catches for 34 yards. The last 2 games, he's at 6.1 points per game in FanDuel scoring. Decent matchup because we know the Las Vegas run defense is abysmal, but he's too risky. And like I said, he's got 1 carry since he fumbled in Week 9 against Buffalo. So, it looks like they're phasing him out. So that's kind of where I am for the running back position. Not a fan. Now, you and I talked before. I had a tough situation to find some sits in the 49er and Seattle game. I didn't really care for Kenneth Walker because he's so up and down against that stout defense. if they're trailing as an underdog, whatever, you might see some more Charbonnet in the passing game. But he was like real great the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season, and his numbers have tailed off some. So that was kind of someone I'm like lukewarm on.
Okay.
But I don't like Mostert at all. I think he's a not used right now until you can. I mean, it's the H-hand show, obviously, because he's just, so that's kind of where I'm at for running backs this week.
All right. Well, I've got my running backs here, and this is how I do it. My must starts or my no brainers are running backs are already ranked 1 through 12, and then I've got my RB2s. Hopefully, you've got some of those RB2s that are must starts, and then I'll get into my sits and the sleepers. So my first must start is Joe Mixon versus Dallas. Again, we kind of talked about the Cowboys right now, and if you saw last week's game, it was a 3-and-out, 3-and-out, 3-and-out. So I think Houston controls this game pretty well, and who better to do it than with Joe Mixon there? Dallas gives up the 2nd most rushing yards per game, the 7th most total yards per game. Plus, Houston won't have to put up a bunch to keep up with Dallas. So, they get up by 14, 17 points. They're going to be running. And I would even, go so far as to say Damian, I'm drawing a blank, RB2 in Houston.
Oh, Pierce.
Damian Pierce. Yep. Probably will get a handful of carries that are decent as well. So Joe Mixon is my number 1 guy there. Number 2 is Breece Hall. He's currently numbered, and by the way, Joe Mixon, 10th. Again, depending on what kind of fantasy format that you're in, he's 10th for running backs right now. Breece Hall is 11th. Again, going up against Indy, who gives up the 4th most total yards per game, the 3rd most rushing yards per game. Plus, it's the same situation as Mixon. So where they should be able to get up. You never really, the Jets are a little bit more of an anomaly as far as they're either going to come out and score 10 points or they could put up 30. But I think in this case, you've got the same kind of a situation. Indy's going, there's going to be a lot of 3-and-out, 4-and-out type of plays where the Jets are going to be able to dictate that. And that's why I also like Aaron Rodgers as a sleeper this week. And then here's another no-brainer for me is Alvin Kamara versus Cleveland. Now, and this one might be, I'm going off Alvin Kamara. He's 3rd overall versus Cleveland, who does not have the defense that they thought that they would. Last year, they had a top defense in the NFL, if not the best defense in the NFL. And Alvin is coming off of a midweek last week. I think he's full speed ahead right before the bye week next week. And they're going to give him quite a bit. So Alvin Kamara is going to put up probably the biggest game out of any one of these 3 that I've mentioned so far. My RB2 is a guy that you'll love to hear, Najee Harris versus Baltimore. I know that they don't give up a whole lot of rushing yards, but they allow the 6th most total yards per game and the 8th most points allowed per game. And if you've watched Baltimore games, you know that Baltimore is the most penalized team this year to date. And it sets up a situation that's happened numerous times this year where they get a defensive pass interference in the end zone. It's a 1st and goal type of situation. Harris could break away. He's going to get some points that way. I think this is going to be a very high-scoring game. And like you said, one of the most exciting games of the week.
And the total's at 48, so it's another high one.
Yeah. My second RB2 is Josh Jacobs against Chicago. Again, Chicago not being able to put up a lot of points. They're going to be able to run the ball pretty well. Chicago gives up the 9th most rushing yards per game. Again, it's the quarterback situation in Chicago. They're not going to put up a lot of points. It's going to allow Green Bay to get out to a lead like New England did. New England doesn't even have a very good offense, but they got out to a big lead against Chicago last week, shut them down to 3 points, and they were able to run the ball. Third one, a guy that you mentioned, H-Chain there at 13th overall versus Las Vegas. They allow the 3rd most points per game, and they've got their own issues there in Las Vegas as well with quarterbacks. So